and welcome. On today's episode of Murder Chronicles, I will be narrating to you the disturbing story of 4 little girls who were killed after their house was set on fire. Kiana Davis, 11 years old, Kiara Phillips, 9 years old, Carol McDonald, 7 years old, and Kiani Walsh were living with their mother, Gillian Rose, in Flora, Indiana. As the detectives got into the case, they would first report that the cause of the fire was accidental. But as they dug deeper into the layers, they would later come to discover that the fire was not accidental, but rather intentional. And if you'd like to know the details of exactly what happened, and if to you this feels like true crime, then you are at the right place. And so, let's take a look together. In November 2016, 4 little girls by the names Kiana Davis, Kiara Phillips, Carol McDonald, and Kiani Walsh were all killed after someone heinously set fire to their house, trapping them inside. 8 years since the incident, detectives have come up with inconclusive theories, and a million questions still remain unanswered. There are numerous layers to the story: the investigations, the emotional torture to the family, and the broader issue of justice for the most vulnerable. But deep down, what brought the worst pain was the tragic loss of 4 innocent souls whose lives were tragically terminated. Such innocent souls deserve all the justice, and the perpetrator must be held accountable. The journey towards the quest for truth is not only about closure for the family, but also about ensuring that justice is indeed served for the tragic murder of such innocent little girls. Kiana, Kiara, Carol, and Kiani were being raised by their mother, Gillian Rose. They were all born in Missouri. The oldest of them, Kiana, was born on June 5, 2005 in Columbia, Missouri. She was bright, curious, adventurous, and enjoying studying the world around her. Kiani made up her days with a good book and her favorite TV shows. She was highly intellectual and active girl who loved sports. She could play around and stayed active most of the time. She had a good taste for fashion and could try out different styles and outfits. She also had a great connection to nature and enjoyed picnics at the park, exhibiting a sense of wonder and a contagious enthusiasm. Kiara Phillips, the second daughter, was born 2 years later after Kiana. She was born on September 27, 2007 in St. Louis, Missouri. She was kind and shared Kiana's passion for reading nice books. However, she was more artistic and enjoyed music a lot. Every time she was in the house, she was either singing or dancing to her favorite song. She was more social and more friendly. Her outgoingness gravitated people towards her. Kiara enjoyed parties a lot. Carol was born on June 2nd, 2009. She was also born in St. Louis, Missouri. She was energetic with great love for dancing. Carol also loved going to school to see her teachers and friends. On the 10th of January, 2011, Gaylan had welcomed her last and 4th daughter, Kiani, in Jefferson City, Missouri. Kiani was quite reserved, preferred staying indoors, and most of the time, she remained cuddled to her mother, sometimes laying in bed beside her as they watched TV. She was described as Mama's girl who was always shy and did not like playing outside with other kids. Through thick and thin, Gaylan remained a committed mom who loved and cared for her 4 daughters deeply. She was faced by daily challenges, being a single mom and raising the 4 daughters on her own. Maintaining the balance between work, home, and emotional support for her daughters was not an easy responsibility. But like any other person, she sometimes went out of balance. But despite it all, Her love and commitment towards her girls never wavered. After all, her whole world revolved around them. She ensured that she provided them with a stable home. After being in Missouri for some years, Gaylan found the need to allow for some change. A desire for better and different life led her towards making a bold move. They packed up and they moved to Flora, Indiana, in the hope for a better and greener pastures. This was a chapter full of hope and a possibility towards building a better life. Gaylan chose to move to Flora because her dad, Tracy Ross, was living there. Her dad had spent a big part of his life behind bars after he was arrested when Gaylan was only 11 years. He had finally decided to turn his life around and wanting to rebuild the broken relationship between him and his daughter Gaylan. So for Gaylan, going to Flora would give her father a chance to allow Tracy's granddaughters into his life, what they all wanted as a family. Initially, they were living in the same house with her dad. By then, Gaylan had secured herself a job, working at a gas station. 8 months later, Gaylan found herself and her daughters a place to live. They moved out of Tracy's house. The place she found was a duplex on East Columbia and South Division Street in Flora, paying a rent amount of $500 per month. At least, it was close to her workplace. They moved to their new home on the 1st of May 2016 and began to settle. The girls had already been enrolled to school right after they moved to Flora. The girls' neighbors described them as well-behaved and friendly. They had noted them playing outside their home during the day, and it was clear that they were very polite. Gaylan described the life in Flora as different compared to that in Missouri. It was not easy, and for the first time in her life, that is when she faced prejudice. That was not the part of change she was looking for, but despite it all, life was slowly falling into place. The girls had started school, and Kiana, her firstborn daughter, had already joined the basketball team in school. She clearly loved the sport. Life wasn't perfect, but Gaylan found it good, and the best part of it was that they were happy. Sadly, 6 months after they had settled down, a few days to Thanksgiving, the family was faced by tragedy in the worst form of evil. Gaylan's life would turn upside down. On November 20th, the weekend seemed just like a normal one, just like any other they had spent. The evening was calm and quiet. During the day, Kiana had spent her Sunday playing basketball with her team. Tracy had caught his daughter Gaylan, wanting to get full details about how they spent their weekend. What they all did not know was that evil awaited them only a few hours away. At around 3:30 a.m. in the morning of November 21st, 2016, something just woke Gaylan. On her way down the hallway, she was overcome by smoke. The apartment was ablaze. The flames were roaring and the fire spreading quickly. The apartment was a first-floor apartment, but was a split level, and so the girl's bedroom was upstairs. When the mother realized that the apartment was on fire, she tried to make her way through upstairs and get her daughters. Sadly, the smoke is too thick, heavy, and she could not see or even breathe. At 3:35 a.m., a 911 dispatcher received a call. Reports of a fire with 4 children trapped in the apartment were made. 2 officers on a night patrol arrived at the scene first. They were caught on camera driving down the scene, and they finally arrived at the burning apartment. They quickly got out of the car, encountered Gaylan, and asked her where her daughters were. She told them they were still inside the house upstairs. The officers entered the building in an attempt to make their way to the girl's bedroom. However, the smoke was too thick, and none of the 2 officers managed to get to the girl's bedroom. Out of options, the officers first retrieved What hurts most is that the Flora Fire Department station was just a few blocks away, yet several minutes went by before the fire team arrived. One of the officers, a volunteer firefighter, had attempted to go back into the apartment to save the girls, but unfortunately the fire by then had gotten too intense. While inside, one of the officers went down. When the firefighters arrived, several minutes after the 911 call, they managed to enter the home. The two officers trapped in the building were recovered by the fire team and were taken to a nearby hospital. Sadly, the 4 girls were already dead. They could not be resuscitated. Their mother, who had also attempted to save them, sustained severe burns and smoke intoxication and had to be airlifted to a nearby health facility. In the first light of 21st November 2016, Flora faced a new day with life and determination. But this was before the tragic news of the fire spread all over through the media. It was a small and close community, and so the news spread like bushfire. The whispers about the disaster traveled quickly, and everyone heartbroken by the tragic news about 4 innocent girls losing their lives. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers found it hard to absorb the shock as they tried to process such a loss. Flora was covered by a dark cloud full of disbelief, leaving the community in a prolonged period of grief. When the investigators to the case kicked in, a tragic turn of events would take place. What had been presumed to be an accident would be proven wrong. It was no accident. On this day of 21st November 2016, Kiana Davis, 11 years, Kiera Phillips, 9 years, Kerry McDonald, 7 years, and Kiana Walsh, 5 years old, were killed on a tragic fire that spread through their first-floor apartment. As the investigators delved deeper into the case, the shocking truth behind the actual cause of the fire was revealed. This made the town of Flora to remain engulfed in grief and disbelief. Vigils were held in honor of the 4 sisters, with devastated family members and heartbroken community members. They together mourned the unimaginable loss. At the same time, investigation remained ongoing, and as detectives combed through the charred remains of the apartment, which was once a home, they tried to piece together any evidence that would provide them with a clue on how the fatal fire began. Could it be a faulty electricity wire, a burning candle, or something else? As they struggled with this, funerals for the 4 girls were held at a local high school. Football players from the high school volunteered as pallbearers, carrying the 4 little caskets in and out of the surface. Their mother finally would recover from her physical injuries, but the toll of losing all of her daughters was something no amount of time or healing could ever mend. The loss weighed on her every day. A grief so deep and left a permanent wound to her heart. Every moment reminded her of the memories they shared, the plans they would never execute, and the milestones they would never hit together. As she continued to struggle with embracing this undeniable reality, investigators' revelation would add a new layer of pain. On January 2017, Fire Department investigators delivered their complete report. They would determine that the fire was maliciously started. They would add that the fire was incendiary and that accelerants had been found in several areas of the apartment. Their conclusion was that someone had intentionally set the apartment on fire. With such revelation, the investigators had to find out who exactly started the fire. People in the community spoke in whispers, discussing about who could have committed such a despicable crime. Dear viewer, believe it or not, their suspicions first turned to Gaylan. Despite the physical injuries she sustained, trying to save the girls from the fire, people could not help from questioning if somehow Gaylan had something to do with the fire. A reward of $50,000 to anyone who would offer sustainable information about the fire was offered to the public. Sadly, weeks followed, but no one came forward with any information concerning the fire. But early February of 2017, 3 months since the girls were killed, the investigators officially announced that the fire was intentional. A private investigator to the case had sent an email to a local news station. In that email, he stated that the fire was caused by arson, which was a speculation, and that there was no determination made because the detectives were still proceeding with the case. This message would cast a shadow over the investigation process as well as the detectives, but this was not the only cause for their raised suspicion. 7 months into the case, the lead detective on the case resigned under mysterious conditions. There were suspicions that he had unprofessionally handled the case. In November 2017, a year since the fire tragedy, the chief of the fire department also resigned from his position after there were revelations that his boss, namely John Irish, who was the president of the Flora Town Council, happened to be the landlord to the apartment where Gaylan and her 4 daughters lived. These resignations of such lead figures surrounded the case with speculations, and their exits only complicated the case deeper. Although the February report indicated that the cause of the fire was not determined to be intentional, local states as well as federal agents involved in the case never changed the cause of the fire. They continued to treat it as a fire set with murder intentions. During this time, Gaylan struggled to push through into the world that felt senseless. She had lost her daughters forever, to never see their faces again or listen to their soft laughter outside the house or even share the warmth of their small hugs. Though she received unrelenting support from friends, family, and community, Gaylan felt their overwhelming absence every single day of her life. One thing she knew for sure was that moving on without her kids was an unbearable burden she had to carry her entire life. She found her mind grappled with lingering questions that remained unanswered. Who would want to hurt her children, and why? Her emotional wound would remain stuck forever on her as she faced the reality of her 4 daughters that she loved dearly yet lost them so tragically. The first anniversary for the girls finally came, yet Gaylan, her family, and the community had no answers as to who and why the girls were killed so tragically. This brought endless frustration. It was heartbreaking to imagine that the person responsible was still out there roaming freely among civilized people. Eventually, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, joined the family and the community's plea for information, transparency, and closure. On October 2017, the NAACP held a press conference accusing the detectives of bungling the case and trying to cover up their mistakes. They added that a year was too long for them to have answered the pending questions and that they should have been wrapping up the case by then. The NAACP assured to leave no stone unturned in ensuring that the perpetrator was brought before justice. Barbara Bowling Williams gave an assurance during a press briefing. Many people in the community, including Gaylan, believed that if the 4 girls would have been white, the case would have been handled differently and more carefully. A year after the fire, Gaylan left Flora. She could not remain at a place that held such bad memories of losing her daughters. Years followed, and the community remained haunted by the death of these girls, yet no information emerged. The cloud of suspicion lingered. In December 2017, the Indiana Fire Department began a fresh review of the case to confirm the cause of the fire. In January 2018, They issued a report confirming that the fire was indeed intentional. However, no much evidence was provided to support their report, apart from saying that exolerant had been found in one section of the apartment. Almost 7 years after the girls' deaths, Gaylan was finally proved as clean by the Indiana Police Department. She was no suspect. This was just little consolation. After all, she was sure that she had never caused her daughter's death. She had by then filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the landlord and his business partner. In 2023, the case was resolved. However, the amount of money that Gaylan received remains as disclosed. In August 2023, the home where the fire incident occurred was demolished after it was determined that there was no need to resolve the property as part of investigation. Dear viewer, at the time of this video production, the case towards finding the person who killed Kiana, Kiara, Kerio and Kiani remains as open. That is according to the Indiana State Police. There are no new suspects. There is no new information so far. 8 years are almost wrapping up since the 4 little girls were killed by someone. Their family, friends, and community remains haunted by the unfortunate reality that no one has ever been held accountable. The crime was never random, and the person who committed the heinous crime must be so evil. The act seemed way too personal. Someone wanted to hurt the people inside that home. And as a result, Kiana Davis, Kiara Phillips, Kerio McDonald, and Kiani Walsh, 4 innocent little girls, lost their lives. Someone out there knows the truth. Someone out there knows why. And such a person deserves to be held accountable for such a ferocious crime. The girls deserved to live. They deserve to explore life to the end. And until justice is served, we shall not be silenced. May Kiana, Kiara, Kerio, and Kiani continue resting in perfect peace.